Hello. Today, I'd like to discuss government regulation and how it creates monopolies. Now, often in political environments, the political left like to claim that capitalism creates the monopolies, these big mega corporations that they rail against all the time. When the truth of the matter is, it's actually quite the opposite. Now, government regulations make it more difficult for new companies to compete with standing companies. For example, let's use the car industry for the purpose of this video to discuss corporations and how it restricts access to the market via regulation and thus creates monopolies of major car industries. Let's say you have an idea for a car that runs on a breath of air, 10,000 miles on a breath of air, and you're going to manufacture this car to compete with the gasoline-powered cars. Now, what happens is that for you to even get your car onto the market, you would have to pay millions in lawyers' fees, patent searches, state regulations, testing to meet state regulations, etc. A grocery list of things before you even get the car being able to be manufactured and sold. It's far easier for you to accept a handout of money from a car company to not process your item than it would be for you to actually produce it. So you have that area of regulation. It blocks access to the market to new companies. Patents. When our founding fathers first created patents, they were only meant to be there for 7 years. They weren't meant to be lifetime, double lifetime, 100 years, infinitely long periods of time. They become that, but they were never intended to be that. And what does patents do? Patents lock ideas down to ownership by one person. Why does this create monopolies? It creates monopolies because when a person can lock down an idea and attach that person, other people, including that person, if they want to keep that idea from reaching the market, can buy that person out, and thus they can control the idea from being released to the market. Now, there are ways around it, and what a lot of people do is they'll look at the patent and they'll change enough stuff. And there's actually a list on how much you have to change something for it to be your own idea. But they change it just enough so that they can claim it as a new idea. But that slows down the process of bringing that idea to the marketplace. And thus, it encourages again and installs again monopolies. Let's say, for example, and what's the problem with monopolies? Monopolies drive up cost because they can control the supply, and the demand is not split between them and other individuals. So all the demand goes to them, and they can control the supply, thus they can control the cost. Open markets tend not to do that. Government requirements drive up these costs in cars because when you buy a car, the car has to have all sorts of gear on it required by the government, like airbags, safe seat belts, certain types of fuel efficiency, certain crumble zones, certain grocery list of things, and it always gets bigger. There's the list of things that a car company has to include in a car is infinite. Thus, it's impossible to create a cheap, small, efficient car because you have all these other things you have to tack on. For example, a car created in India for like $5,000 can't be sold in the United States because it doesn't meet all of our requirements of the state. Now on one side you might say, well, gosh, our car would be safer and etc. And you're right, our cars are safer than that $5,000 basic car. But on the flip side, it means cars are less accessible by the regular public. They're more expensive. They're harder to get a hold of. This drives up the cost of living and makes it more difficult to get a vehicle. Another aspect of how government involvement in the industry, in the private sector, drive up costs and create monopolies is government contracts. and government regulations. Government regulations and contracts centralize the authority into one spot, into those who get the contracts. And those contracts are frequently got by people who have political connections to those who are making the decisions. And I'm not simply saying Republican political connection. I'm talking Democrat political connections. I mean, look at currently health care. Who's pushing for it? The unions. Why are they pushing for it? Because the companies can't afford to pay their pensions, can't afford to pay for their health care. So how are they going to keep their health care for all their union members? By having the taxpayers pay for it through universal health care. See, there's the trick. And that's why they're pushing for it. That's why certain companies are pushing for it, because them being required to carry health care, it makes it so that them being required to carry health care makes it so that they have an extra cost that is not directly linked to their business that they have to cover. A car company having to provide health care means that they have an extra cost tacked on. And to them, if they can foist that cost off onto the government, hey, it's happy days. That's 25% of their budget off the record. This is the basic problem here. Anyways, that's what my discussion is about monopolies and how government and government regulations and laws prevent people from building things that are demanded or requested by the general population because the state has deemed that these things should not be built. Thank you very much. Have yourself a good day, and God bless.